The world watches, but the people of Syria face difficulties. For more than a decade, Syria has been at the heart of one of the most devastating conflicts of the 21st century. What began as a peaceful protest has spiraled into a brutal civil war. And this leaves the mark on the country, people, and the entire region. Yet, amid the rubble and despair, there remains a glimmer of hope. Hope for peace, for recovery, and for the return of normalcy. Now, in 2011, the streets of Syria were alive with protest. In 2011, something big was happening in the Arab world. It started in Tunisia, where protests erupted against the authoritarian government. What began as a fight for basic freedom soon spread across the region, sparking the Arab Spring. In countries like Egypt, Libya, and Yemen, people rose up demanding an end to dictatorship, corruption, and economic hardship. This wave of change reached Syria too. Inspired by the Arab Spring, people took to the streets demanding democratic reforms and an end to the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. The government's harsh response, including violent crackdowns, only escalated tensions. So by the end of 2011, the Syrian civil war was officially underway. So what started as a fight for freedom quickly became a multi-sided conflict with rebel groups, the government, and foreign powers all involved. From a peaceful movement, Syria was plunged into chaos, a chaos that continues today. So as the war dragged on, several militant groups rose to prominence. One of the most important was the Syrian Democratic Forces, an umbrella militia that includes the People's Protection Units, the Kurdish forces in northern Syria. Now the Kurds, seeking autonomy in a region known as Syrian Kurdistan, had a complicated relationship with the Assad regime. While the two sides didn't target each other directly, their interests often clashed. Another powerful player was the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a militant group originally tied to Al-Qaeda. Led by Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the HTS controlled the region of Idlib, one of the last rebel-held areas. Now, Julani's story was one of rise, betrayal, and ambition. He had initially fought against American forces in Iraq, joining Al-Qaeda and eventually leading the creation of Jabhat al-Nusra. His goal was to create an independent Al-Qaeda branch in Syria distinct from ISIS. Over time, HTS and Turkey-backed Free Syrian Army, now called the Syrian National Army, aligned, making them a significant force against the Assad government. So the key locations like Idlib and Aleppo became symbols of the conflict. Now Idlib in the northwestern Syria became a haven for rebel groups, while Aleppo, once Syria's largest city, became a symbol of the country's suffering. It witnessed some of the fiercest battles as regime forces and opposition fighters fought for control. So in 2015, it seemed like Assad's government, Syrian government, was on the brink of collapse. Rebel forces had captured vast swaths of territory and the regime was losing ground fast. It seemed like victory for the opposition was within reach. But then something happened. Russia intervened. Russia's military support turned the tide for Assad. Russian airstrikes, along with support from Iran and Hezbollah, helped the Syrian government reclaim control of key areas, and these key areas included Aleppo in 2016. Now, this marked a turning point in the war, shifting the balance of power back in favor of the Assad regime. So, the Syrian civil war has come to a devastating cost. Over 5 lakh people have died and millions have been forced to flee their homes. Cities like Aleppo, once bustling with life, are now rubble. The war has displaced more than 12 million people. Some have become refugees in neighboring countries like Turkey and Lebanon, while others remain trapped within Syria's borders. Even today, Syrian civilians face daily challenges: access to food, water and healthcare is limited, and many children have lost years of schooling. The mental and emotional toll of war is felt by nearly everyone in the country. Yet, despite the violence and despair, Syrians continue to hope for peace. Today, Syria is divided. While the regime controls much of the country, areas like Idlib and parts of northern Syria remain under the rebel control. Though the Assad government of Syria has regained much of the territory, peace is still far from reach. Many areas are still plagued by fighting, and millions of refugees remain displaced. There are efforts to rebuild Syria, but it will take years, possibly decades, to heal the country. The involvement of international actors like the US, Turkey, Russia, and Iran has only made the conflict more and more complex. The country's future depends on diplomatic efforts, but it is clear that Syrians themselves must lead the way in rebuilding their lives. So, the international community has a crucial role to play in Syria's future. Humanitarian aid continues to pour it, but it's not enough. Rebuilding Syria's infrastructure, economy, and society will require long-term support. Beyond the immediate crisis, efforts must be made to address the political situation and ensure all Syrians can live in peace with equal rights and opportunities. So, to conclude, the story of Syria is one of tragedy, but also of resilience. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the Syrian people continue to fight for a better future. The road to peace will be long, and it will require the help of the international community. But there is hope that one day Syria will recover and its people can once again live in peace and rebuild the country they once loved.